What's going on, everybody? I'm Jerry, and today we have my Week 13 biggest takeaways, going over all the important games and all the biggest things that happened, the biggest winners and losers, and what we learned moving forward. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. A little bit of a different format than you're used to if you watch these takeaways videos, so let me know what you think down below if there's anything I should change. And let's get right into it. Not going over every single game. We're just going over the biggest winners and losers and what we learned the most. First, learning about the Seahawks Cowboys games. Seahawks did put up a good fight. Seahawks have been struggling these past couple weeks. Haven't looked like the team they looked like early on this year and last year. So I think it was a good game for them, although another loss to only lose by 6 to the Cowboys. I think it was a well-fought game, and they at least stayed in it. And I think reason I'm asking what the plan is for the future is because I don't know where they're going to be at. They kind of look like one of those teams where they might sneak into the playoffs, but you might have to write them off, as Geno Smith doesn't like you doing. But I think you might have to write them off because they tell very clearly here that they're not going to be a juggernaut or one of those huge teams. They could. I see. I can't even see them like stringing together like a hot little win streak in the playoffs. So they're going to be a good football team. What are they moving forward? We don't know. Geno Smith isn't getting any younger. It's been a nice little emergence, but almost kind of seems like some wasted years, overreacting a little bit. And then the penalty issues, that goes for both teams. There was penalties left and right in this game. There was bad pass interference on some questionable catches and just a lot of missed calls this week and a lot of incorrect calls, in my opinion, not in just this game. The one we just had the other day, Chiefs and Packers Sunday night, was the same way. I mean, the last 4 calls were all not great. We'll talk about that later. Then the Cowboys, you find that the defense has holes. DK Metcalf and whoever was on DaRon Bland was just burning him. Now, he gets an interception later in the game, which is great for him, but he's kind of like being the Trevon Diggs of last year, where he can make a lot of big, flashy plays, but you can clearly see here that he can also let up a lot. He can let up a lot of yards. He can get burned. So, but I mean, to put up 35 points against Cowboys defense, who have had one of the top defenses, that's big time for the Seahawks. Had to ask about Dak being MVP. He's currently the favorite, especially with Jalen Hurts having a very off week. It makes sense for Dak to move forward. If you look at stats side by side, and it's not all about stats, but Dak is killing Jalen Hurts. It's not even really close. If you factor in Jalen Hurts' rushing touchdowns, the touchdowns look good. But other than that, his passing stats are not great, and Dak Prescott's having the best year of his career. So definitely deserving of being up there. Have to pose that question with how they're playing, and especially I'm kind of on the rarely, but I'm on the Stephen A side for this. I still think the Cowboys will fall off in the playoffs. It just seems to be what they do. But yeah, have to ask the question about Dak for MVP, especially leading in the voting right now, and not really showing many weaknesses. Obviously, his interceptions carried over a little bit from last year, but it's really hasn't been that bad. And then I put, are they a good version of the Chargers? Because it seems like both sides of the ball haven't, very much so in this game, but even in other games, both sides of the ball can't be great. Where, like, that's what I always talk about with the Chargers is, like, offense could play an amazing game, but then the defense shits the bed and, allows more points than ever, and it just kind of becomes a problem for the Chargers. But then they'll have another game where their defense will play lights out and their offense can't produce, and that's kind of what happened to the Cowboys just a couple weeks this year. But this game really seemed like it, especially with the defense playing so poorly. So not that I think the Cowboys are like the Chargers, but this was a kind of a Chargers-esque week where the Cowboys this whole season have been kind of, their defense wins the game, offense plays very well, but usually has an easy shot because they go up early. Whereas this game, it was kind of a fight the whole time. So Cowboys win 41-35. Cowboys are still one of the top teams in the NFC. Seahawks are not, although in the playoff conversation. Cardinals Steelers. This one was a big surprise. I picked Steelers all the way on this one, and the Cardinals really just exposed the Steelers' defense. They kind of showed that the Steelers' offense still can't really do anything. I don't think the game would have been much different if Pickett was in. I actually thought Mitch Trubisky played pretty well. It just wasn't, wasn't a great scenario for him, especially going in with them down early. But what's weird is if I would have told you that the team that won this game played the better defense, the offense didn't look amazing, and they just kind of fought out for a victory, you'd go, oh yeah, the Steelers won. But that was actually the Cardinals, who have not been known to have a great defense this year, and their offense didn't play very well. I don't even think James Conner averaged 4 yards a carry. Although he did run the ball pretty efficiently, getting, I think it was like 3.8 or 3.9, so he's still doing well. But then Kyler Murray throwing the ball did not throw the ball well either. There was a couple issues. I mean, he's good at getting the ball to Trey McBride, but seems to kind of be it for them. And then there was a bit of a punt fest in this game. A lot of punts, just punting the ball back and forth. A lot of defense. Cardinals just end up scoring more points. And then my surprising loss, that's kind of why it was a surprising loss, as I mentioned, with the defense thing. You'd think the team that played better defense, offense didn't play very well, but still won the game. That's been the Steelers every week this year, and it was the Cardinals this week. Then I put was Canada the problem, because, of course, they have that 400 total yard week last week, and then this week was not very good at all. You can make the argument for Mitch. I really don't think that Mitch is that far behind Kenny Pickett as far as talent. So, and then I put what's next, because they're another team, kind of like the Seahawks, where like they have a pretty good record. They've played good football this year, but are they really going to be able to make a playoff run? It doesn't seem like it. It seems like it's going to be a typical Mike Tomlin year where he has a winning record and 9-8 or whatever, maybe 10-7, and they're pretty good, but then they just fizzle out in the playoffs. It's just looking like a repeat of that for the Steelers. It's too bad. Cardinals win it 24-10, and that's what we learned. Broncos-Texans. This one, Broncos have had a great run. They had their few games in a row where they're beating good teams, playing great football, both sides of the ball. It comes to an end. The Broncos had an opportunity to win. Russ throws that interception in the red zone at the end. Not a great look for him, trying to win a game. Kind of showing how good the Texans really are this year. I don't know. That's the other thing, is I don't know what to think for the Texans moving forward, especially you have, Tank Dell's going to unfortunately miss the rest of the season. Will Anderson has his breakout game, though, big game for him. And then is Stroud going to get MVP? Because if you look at his stats, we talked about Dak and Hurts, comparison of stats. Hurts was the by far favorite prior. You look at both of them, and Dak is way above Hurts. And then you look at Stroud, and Stroud is like right there behind Dak. I think the biggest problem is his completion percentage is a lot lower, but that's all right. I mean, he's a rookie. You got to factor in that he's a rookie still, and that's why I think it might be a little early to call him MVP. Like that's great how exciting it is for the rookie to be doing well, but is he really playing better than Dak Prescott? Is he really playing better than Patrick Mahomes, or name other elite quarterbacks? I think you could place CJ Stroud into some other situations that aren't as good and then not have as much success. The Texans do have a very good offensive line. The running back duo of Singletary and Pierce has been good, although Pierce hasn't been great this year. Singletary's kind of showed out when he needs to. You can talk about how Nico Collins and wasn't doing all this last year, but wasn't really getting as many opportunities. So you have to give Stroud his flowers there with being able to get the guys the ball. But Stroud leads the league in inaccurate passes this year. So is it really all on Stroud, or is it an offense that's made well for him, or is it Tank Dell, who we didn't see what he looked like last year on the team, obviously, but he's having a big effect on it. Dalton Schultz is a nice security blanket who, unfortunately, I believe was out this week. But he's been a nice security blanket. So you factor all that stuff in. I don't think that he's worthy of winning MVP. I think it's good that he's in the conversation because he is playing football like he should. And I think right now he's tied with Tyreek Hill in MVP odds, which seems still a little low for me. But I don't if you had to pick like a top 3 players that should win it, I don't know if I could put Stroud in there. But great week for the Texans getting another win. I'd be more interested in Coach of the Year for DeMeco Ryans, honestly. I feel like the chances of him winning Coach of the Year should be significantly higher than Stroud winning MVP, because I think he has a big effect on it too with how that defense has been playing, especially against a Broncos team whose offense has been great. So Texans end up getting a win over the Broncos, 22-17, and Texans are looking like a great team this year. Lions Saints, this one, excuse me, the Lions get off to a super hot start. They scored 3 touchdowns in 7 minutes. There was 8 minutes left in the first, and they were up 21-0. And they played a very Packers-esque game, actually, in this one, where, the Saints played a very Packers-esque game, where the Packers had so many games this year where the other team goes up like 2 or 3 scores, and then they're playing from behind the whole time and can't catch up. And the Saints at one point were only down 3 points in this game. They made it 24-21, and then the Lions get another score and just kind of run away with it. So the Saints, my apologies, not the Lions, kind of playing a Packers-esque game. The defense really stinks, though. The Saints' offense has not been playing very well. And when Derek Carr went down, there was a time early on where Derek Carr was coming back out onto the field after I think Taysom Hill was in, and the crowd was booing louder than ever. So the Boo Birds got Derek Carr, and then not much longer later, on a quarterback hit, he just gets absolutely flattened, full body weight on him. It sucks. It was a big hit, but he looked like he injured his neck, his back, his shoulder, and his head all in one hit. So that was bad. And then Famous Jameis comes in, super exciting tip drill to Chris Olave play right out the gate. And it makes me think, I think there's a chance that the Saints win this game if Jameis Winston starts. Just because of how Carr was doing. Sure, Carr helped bring him back, but I don't know if Jameis Winston has him go down that early. I mean, Jameis Winston is probably in the best world. The best version of Jameis Winston is probably better than Derek Carr, but the worst version of Jameis Winston is significantly worse than Derek Carr as well. So it's tough to pick there. I think they just need to keep getting Taysom Hill involved more. I love his involvement in the red zone. He seems to be unstoppable in the red zone, and I don't see why they can't involve him more, especially when you have your quarterback go down. Can't involve him more, in just open field or, right after the kickoff. Something exciting. They had to put the Saints dead, because I went in thinking that they're going to definitely win their division, and now the Falcons have a game and a half on them, and they seem to be falling apart. I don't think their game plan's great. Their defense, which was always kind of the star of the team, is also not playing great. So I think the Saints might be dead. I hate to say it. I think the Falcons might win the division with like an 8-9 or 9-8 record, and that whole division is just kind of a mess. But the Lions end up taking down the Saints 33-28, and what ended up being a close game. Next we have 49ers Eagles. This was just a murder. The 49ers finally gave it to the Eagles here. They got their payback from the NFC Championship rematch, or in the NFC Championship rematch. The 49ers just have so many weapons. And I put the last thing was, can they stay hot? Because you see when Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo had 3 touchdowns. He came out wearing black forces, just absolute nuts. Ayuk had a good game. McCaffrey had a good game. Kittle had a good game. Some really nice blocks. We talk about it every week. Brock Purdy, I think people think he's overrated. I don't think he is. I think if any quarterback would have worked in this system, Jimmy Garoppolo would have worked. And Brock Purdy he is a good quarterback. I think it definitely helps that he's on the team that he's on. But if you can make that argument for him, why can't you make that argument for Jalen Hurts on the 49ers, on the Eagles? Because he has best offensive line in the league, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert's injured, but Dallas Goedert's a good, probably maybe top 10 tight end. I don't know. I can't think of all the names right now, but you could probably squeeze him in at the very least top half. DeAndre Swift has been a great running back. So is Jalen Hurts not good too? That's why I don't like when people do that, because I personally, when I look at Jalen Hurts, I actually see a lot of what goes on with Justin Fields. Being a Bears fan, Jalen Hurts holds the ball a really long time. His offensive line holds up better, which, not to say that the Bears' O line is bad, because I don't believe that either, but I do believe that Jalen Hurts is good at maneuvering around and then keeping his eyes downfield and making a throw. You see it a lot of times in every game where he kind of stands in the pocket for a little bit, then he rolls out, tries to find something, and if he finds something, great. If he doesn't, he just throws it away. And he does do a good job of keeping his eyes downfield, but that problem alone, I think, is the same problem that Justin Fields has, and I don't think it hurts Jalen Hurts as much because of how good the offensive line is. And I think the game plan's a lot better. I think, not to break off into a tangent, but like I think the Bears need to look at Brian Johnson, the Eagles offensive coordinator, seriously for a coaching job next year because of, he's not Shane Steichen, was it Steichen? Yeah, I think it was Steichen that was the OC. He's not Shane Steichen, but he was in that sort of system and saw it, and he's continuing it. And I like what the Eagles are doing for Jalen Hurts, and I like how Jalen Hurts fits in the system. I think it would be similar for the Bears and Justin Fields. But I think the Eagles needed to lose this. I think they needed a loss. The only thing that makes it tough for me is looking at their schedule moving forward. Their last 3 games are the Giants, the Cardinals, and the Giants. So they're going to have 3 weeks in a row where they're not really playing a very great football team. Obviously, the Cardinals look good this week against the Steelers. Everybody has a good week. Everybody has an off week. The Eagles lost to the Jets. So stuff like that can happen. I also had to put as a defense sustainable because this is a game where you're going up against a very talented football team in the 49ers. And are the Eagles going to be able to consistently keep up with these teams that have great offenses? Because their defense has not been good this year. They had one of the better defenses in the league last year, and their defense is very, very middle of the pack this year. And their offense has been kind of carrying the load and keeping the weight up, but I don't know if the Eagles are going to be able to do that moving forward, and I think this is a wake-up call for them. I don't think the Eagles are dead by any means. They still have the best record in the league, and they are still a great football team, but you definitely have to pay attention to this. Although I think the loss is needed. I think they were going into too many games thinking, oh, yep, we're going to win these games. So I think they needed this to learn that they can lose and learn how not to lose. And so I think that's going to help the Eagles, but we're going to need to see a bounce back in this next week or two because their last 3 weeks are not going to be up against really NFL talent. I mean, again, Cardinals are okay, but they're going to, and especially if they have the bye too, they're going to have 4 weeks off from playing football, like real NFL level football, and then go in to play against a team like the 49ers or the Cowboys. How is that going to work? So we'll have to see what happens moving forward, but I definitely think this is a big wake-up call for the Eagles. And then can they stay hot for the 49ers is just, they had their losing streak of 3 games kind of in the middle of the season, which I think every team needs to have, where you string together a couple losses and then you go, okay, we need to turn on the Jets here. We need to get a move on and start winning games again. And did the 49ers do that too early? Because at this point, everybody's going to have 4 games left. So are they going to be able to keep this together for the 4 more games and then also in the playoffs? I don't know. Are the Eagles going to string together, a couple losses here and then get hot sooner? Are they going to be back? So learn a lot of things here. At the end of the day, the 49ers did just smoke the Eagles. Wasn't really ever close. I think 8 points was the closest they got to in the middle of the game. But 49ers are looking really good. Browns-Rams. This was awesome. I thought this was so great to see Joe Flacco and Matt Stafford just slinging the rock. It was like 2012. Very fun. Browns, I think Joe Flacco might be the best healthy quarterback on that roster. Or I guess best quarterback other than Deshaun Watson, because I liked what he was doing early on. Obviously, it wasn't very sustainable, but I think if Myles Garrett's in this game, Browns probably win this game because the Browns won with a lot less earlier on in the season and P.J. Walker throwing the ball. And I think this is going to really hurt the Browns, though, because if Myles Garrett isn't fully healthy when he comes back, I personally think, this is just my take, I think looking at the award, most valuable player, I think Myles Garrett is the most valuable player in the NFL. Call me crazy. I know it's a quarterback award, but if I was voting, I would vote for Myles Garrett because of his impact on that team. The defense was average. It was like an average of like 200 or just over 200 yards a game that they were allowing when Myles Garrett's in there, and then he's not in there, and the Rams put up almost, I think it was 400, if not, it was very close, and 36 points. So clearly he has a big impact, although just an edge rusher. And then, Flacco, I don't know if that's going to be really sustainable, and I think that it's a closer game and probably a Browns win if Garrett's playing, but at the end of the day, it was a 17-point loss. So it's tough to argue that too anyway. But big loss for the Browns here. And then I put what's next because I don't really know what to think of. There's a lot of teams, it seems like now. Talked about the Seahawks, talked about the Steelers, and now the Browns. What are they going to be? Because they seem to have this good football team and this good record, but they definitely don't look like a Super Bowl contender. It seems like those like 4 or 5 teams are very clear at the top of the NFL. And then the Rams. I think the Rams are the league's biggest sleeper. Every year we see a team sneak into the playoffs and do some damage. The Jaguars last year, and then the Giants last year. The Giants won a playoff game last year. Despite how much of a mess their organization looks like, they won a playoff game last year. So I think the Rams could be that team. Everybody tried to write off the Rams and go, they bet their whole future for one Super Bowl. And if they can keep what they're doing together, the Browns still are a good football team. Sure, they're missing their starting quarterback and their best defensive player, who I believe should be MVP. So obviously you have to factor that in. But I think you really need to consider that the Rams could make it into the playoffs. And I think they can beat good teams. They beat the Seahawks a couple weeks ago. Now they beat the Browns. So they can win those games, and you have to be able to show that to make a playoff run. Puka Nacua, I think, should be the Offensive Rookie of the Year if we're not going to give it to Stroud, which, based on what I said earlier, I guess because I don't want to give him MVP, you probably should give Stroud the Offensive Rookie of the Year. But I think if Stroud does win MVP, I think it would be right for Puka Nacua. I mean, Puka Nacua is having a career year, and it's his rookie year. So he's playing great football. I think he definitely should be talked about. I'm just hearing noises. I know some people have talked about it. And I think most lists he's up there. He's probably up there. I didn't look at the odds, but he's got to be up there for it. But to me, he should be, probably 1 or 2. Definitely no lower than 2. And then I put, does this one count? That's just because, Flacco's in first week playing football in a while. And then Myles Garrett's out. Don't read too much into this although I might be. I just see a win against the Browns, and I see a win against the Seahawks, and I see a lot of good pieces on the football team still, and I think could still do something. Rams end up taking down the Browns, though, 36-19, winning that game. The last game, bunch of penalties, bunch of issues at the end of this game. The Chiefs did struggle early. They're having all sorts of problems. Patrick Mahomes was sacked. I can't remember if it was just the first quarter or like 5 minutes left in the second quarter, or 5 minutes into the second quarter. He was already sacked 3 times, and Patrick Mahomes doesn't get sacked. And it's not normally because of his offensive line. It's because of his ability to move around in the pocket, escape tackles, and his pocket presence is one of the best in the league. But in this game, we talked about earlier how some teams were kind of playing like the Packers. That's what the Chiefs did in this game, where they got down early and tried to fight back and just couldn't fight back enough, and the Packers just kind of held them off for the win. And then the last question is, will they live up to the expectations? Because the expectation is winning AFC Championship, and they seem to do it, at least make it every year. And with teams like the Dolphins and the Ravens and some of these other teams, even the Jaguars, just playing great football, and the Chiefs having constant problems with wide receiver drops and they had a couple injuries on defense that have hurt too. I think they have one of the better cornerback rooms in the league, but you had a couple injuries at linebacker, and they don't get great pressure either. So I don't know if the Chiefs, we could see a year where the Chiefs don't, I hate to say it, especially overreacting after a loss to the Packers, but in the last few years of watching the Chiefs, this definitely looks like the least put together team that they've had because I think mainly because of their problems with the wide receivers, and really the only person getting pressure on defense is Chris Jones. So I don't know. We'll see what happens for the Chiefs. The Packers, on the other hand, what does this mean for them too? Because they're playing really good football, but it seems like they could lose to the Cardinals or they could beat the Chiefs in any given week. And I don't really know what to think of them. They're looking like a team that could sneak into the playoffs. They're actually 7th seed right now. So, but I don't. This is another team where that's great if they win and all, but I don't see them putting up a fight against any of the top teams in the NFL. And I think the Chiefs are one of the top teams. Of course, they just beat them. But I think them just having the Chiefs number and knowing that, oh, their receivers are not big threats. And, the Chiefs in previous years with Tyreek Hill could send him deep, and you have to worry about taking the top off the defense. And this year, it's been a lot of short dink and dunk, quick passes, get the ball down the field. Sure, there's still the improvisational Patrick Mahomes plays, but the game plan seems to have changed. And if you can guard Mahomes to Kelsey, and you can slow down Pacheco, and you can actually get to him and put the pressure on and not allow these long improvisational plays to happen, it seems like that's the recipe to shut down the Chiefs. Now, a lot of teams are going to have to learn how to do it, but it's seeming more doable. So for the Packers, I still don't know what's going to happen. I picked the Packers to cover in this one, and they end up winning the game. And I thought for that reason, I just don't think the Chiefs are going to be as much of a juggernaut as they've been. I think it's the same thing for the Eagles. I don't think the Chiefs and the Eagles are the top two teams in the league right now. So Packers, on the other hand, we'll see what happens. I think they're going to have to keep this up, string together a few more big wins if they're going to make any sort of run. So that is our last game. Obviously, we've got, I don't know when you're watching this video, but we do have the Monday night game coming up here. But let's go over our Week 13 leaders. I'm not going to talk over all of them, just some of the big points. We have Pacheco running the ball the best at 110 yards on 18 carries. Good week for him. Nico Collins with a massive week with Tank Dell coming out of the game. 191 yards, right back to where he was. Nico Collins doing very well early on before that Stroud to Tank Dell connection kind of came together. But Nico Collins has another great week. We had 3 different people with 2 sacks and 2 TFLs in Bud Dupree, Will Anderson, and Khalil Mack. Most offensive yards, 456. Jets with the least yards allowed to the Falcons, despite the Falcons winning the game. And then we have the fun facts. Patriots are the first team to lose 3 games in a row, allowing 10 points or less since the Chicago Cardinals in 1938. And then Matt Stafford battled against Joe Flacco, and Jimmy Graham scored a touchdown this week for the Saints. But it's 2023. That sounds like something that happened in 2012. So I just had to throw that in there. I thought that was awesome, and it was very fun to see that. I'm just imagining like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning coming back and Tony Gonzalez catching a touchdown pass. Like, years before that. That's just kind of what that feels like, seeing that happen. So fun to see that. And that is our Week 13 leaders. And then our player of the week, I'm Jerry, player of the week, is Brock Purdy. I couldn't deny it. Brock Purdy, I mean, here's the stats again. 70% completion, 314 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. A pretty flawless game. We talked about earlier about how people think Brock Purdy's overrated. I think you still have to get the ball to the guys, and I think you still have to make those plays, and he's doing it. Sucks that, for you that he has a good team around him. I mentioned the same thing. We talk about Jalen Hurts every year, like he should win the MVP, and at least Purdy's in the conversation this year, which I love to see, but Hurts is still much higher. Hurts' stats are significantly worse with, in my opinion, you look at positional grades, their offensive line, the Eagles' offensive line is definitely better than the 49ers. Although the 49ers is still good, I would say the Eagles are better. If you look at wide receiver, I think pure like catching the ball, I think you could make an argument for the Eagles. AJ Brown and Devonta Smith versus Debo and Ayuk as far as pass catching goes. Ayuk's been a great pass catcher, but Debo is kind of their little like hybrid guy. And then I think the 49ers win in the tight end position. I think they win in the running back position. But I don't think that we can talk about you. I don't think you can talk negatively about Brock Purdy and then talk positively about Jalen Hurts is kind of my point there. So I got to go with Brock Purdy again, though. He's doing it. He's been killing it. I love to see it. I hope the 49ers keep it up. When the Bears seemed like they were completely dead, 49ers were kind of my bandwagon team that I could at least watch entertaining football with. So I'm going to stick with them in this case moving forward. I like what they're about. Shanahan's a genius. They got a lot of good things going on over there. So Brock Purdy gets the I'm Jerry Player of the Week, and that is going to wrap up this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you liked the little bit new format, a little bit shorter video, but with more information. Best of both worlds, in my opinion. Let me know what you think down below. Like, comment, subscribe, and have a great day.